Okay, we're going.
Welcome. So glad that everybody came down for the last of our Lenten series on the spirituality of the heart. And I'm so pleased to welcome Bonnie Shafrin to talk about the Jewish spirituality of the heart.
Thank you, Jenny. Welcome, everybody. Good morning.
Good morning.
So let's start with, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be acceptable to you, God, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen.
Amen.
So I decided when talking about the Jewish heart to talk about Jewish prayer, which I kind of talked about the last time I talked about spirituality, but I'm going to talk about it a little differently and go into it in a little more depth. In the Talmud, Jewish prayer is referred to avodat halev, service of the heart. In Hebrew, heart is lev, lamed bet, lev, and that's, avodat halev is service of the heart. The Jewish liturgy is pretty well set. It's not really a flexible liturgy in that there is, most of the liturgy is in a book called a Siddur. Siddur comes from the Hebrew word seder, which means order. It's the same word for the Passover Seder, which also comes from the word order because things are done in a particular order. If you go into an Orthodox synagogue, a conservative synagogue, a Reform synagogue, the service is basically the same. In Orthodox, it will probably be mostly in Hebrew. In conservative, it will be a combination of Hebrew and English. And today in Reform, it's also a combination of Hebrew and English with an emphasis on English or the common language, wherever you are in the world. So you can walk into a synagogue anywhere in the world and be able to pray. You will know the prayers. Every synagogue adds their own touches, their own hymns. It depends on the feeling of the rabbi of the day. He might want to add some extra prayers depending on what's going on in the world or what's going on in the congregation. So that's basically what happens. The order of the liturgy is pretty much as follows. There's a bunch of preliminary prayers. Those preliminary prayers pretty much introduce what are you there for? Why are you there? Who is God? Who is the God that you're going to be praying to? This God is the God of our forefathers, God of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Rebecca, Sarah, Rebecca, Leah, and who am I missing? Rachel, thank you. And the God of redemption, who redeemed us from bondage in Egypt and led us to the land which he promised the Jewish people, and the God of creation. So those are basically the prayers. You're kind of reminding who you're praying to, leading up to a prayer called the Ahava Rabbah, which I'm going to come back to in a minute, leading up to the central prayer of Judaism, which is the Shema. I'm also going to come back to that. Then it goes to the Shemona Esrei. The Shemona Esrei is a collection of prayers. Shemona Esrei literally means 18, even though there are 19 benedictions that are in the Shemona Esrei prayer, but when it was named, there originally were 18. It's also called the Amida, or the standing prayer, because it's a prayer during which the congregation is standing. Most of the time, the Amida, the Shemona Esrei, is said individually. Even though you stand as a congregation, you're saying those prayers individually, although in the Reform congregations there's a combination of prayers that you're saying together as a congregation and individually. So that's just basically how it is. The rabbis, after the destruction of the temple, kind of put together the Shemona Esrei. It's kind of like a kitchen sink prayer, like everything you want to put into a prayer is in that one. It has prayers of praise, prayers of petition, prayers of thanksgiving. So that's that. And they all lead up to the reading of the Torah. Torah is not read every day, but when the Torah is read, that is the central part of the service, is the Torah reading, and then you have the closing prayers, which have a variety of different prayers within them. So I want to go back to the Shema. So the Shema prayer is the watchword of the Jewish people. It is Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one. So it is one of two prayers that is commanded in the Torah by God. The other one is the Birkat Hamazon, which is the prayer after meals. But otherwise, the Shema is the one that's required, that's the central. So making the statement that you believe in the one God is the central prayer to Judaism. And I'm going to come back to that too. So immediately preceding that prayer is the Ahava Rabbah. The Ahava Rabbah goes like this: Ahava Rabbah, Ahavta Adonai Eloheinu. With great love have you loved us, Lord our God. Great and abundant mercy have you bestowed upon us. Our Father, our King, for the sake of our forefathers who trusted in you, whom you taught the laws of life, be gracious to us and teach us likewise. Our Father, merciful Father, you who are ever compassionate, have pity upon us and inspire us to understand and discern, to perceive, learn, and teach, to observe, do, and fulfill gladly all of the teachings of your Torah. Enlighten our eyes in your Torah, attach our heart to your commandments, unite our heart to love and revere your name, so that we may never be put to shame. So right before the Shema is a prayer that talks about God's love for people, and talks about the heart. And then right after that, you go into the Shema, which I recited before, and following the Shema is the V'ahavta, which you are familiar with because we've talked about it before. V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chal levavecha u'v'chal nafshecha u'v'chal me'odecha. And you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your might. V'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavacha hayom al levavecha. And these words that I command you this day shall be upon your heart. It goes on, you shall teach them into your children, and blah, 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 blah. I'm not going to go into that part. I'm going to stop there. In the phrase that I just read from the V'ahavta, it's curious, the rabbis looked at, why does it say, and these words that I command you this day shall be upon your heart? Shouldn't it be that these words shall be within your heart? And sometimes the prayer is translated in this way, but if you look at the Hebrew, it's ve'al levavecha, upon, ve'al is on top of, upon your heart. And the reason is because you may know all of the commandments in your mind. You should. They should be on your heart. They should lay on your heart. But it's up to you how you direct those commandments. It's up to you to use your own will as to how those are going to be acted upon and how those are going to be played out. And so it's upon your heart, but your heart has to rise up and take them in, and it's up to the heart. And we're going to talk about the concept of heart in Judaism also to go deeper into that concept. So just wanted to point that out. Also in prayer, we talk about keva, which means the literal knowing of the prayers, the stating of the prayer, stating it by rote, saying the words, keva, and kavanah. Rabbi Joshua Abraham Heschel talks about kavanah a lot. It was very important to him, partly because his orientation was Hasidic, and that's part of the Hasidic orientation. But he wanted people to know that it's not enough just to know the prayers and say the prayers. but to do it with kavanah, with intent. Kavanah means intent. It means do it with your heart. A pictorial image of kavanah is an arrow. So it's an arrow from your heart to God. That's kavanah. And that's very important in Jewish prayer. So talking about, going back into the concept of Jewish heart, the Jewish heart and mind work together. You cannot have one without the other. Often in biblical literature, the heart will be referred to as almost the thinking body. And, you know, why would that be? We know the brain, the mind is the thinking body. Well, in Judaism, the intellect is very revered and esteemed. So those people who are esteemed in the Jewish community are those great scholars, those who have great knowledge. A spiritual leader is judged by his scholarly ability, not just to learn and to know, but to be able to recall things, which I cannot do, so I am not a scholar. But it's really, you cannot be pious and just be learned. You also have to have that concept of heart, of passion, of knowing how to utilize that knowledge, of making wise decisions. Those decisions are not necessarily made with your head, but with your heart. And so there has to be, it's a forever striving in Judaism to have that balance between mind and heart, which is not always an easy balance, because some people go overboard on the intellect, and some people go overboard on the emotion, the passion, and neither one alone is good. It has to come together. So that's the concept of heart. From Exodus 35, just to give an example, there's a quote, "Let all those wise of heart come and do." That quote is taken from the time when the building of the Mishkan, the sanctuary, the tabernacle in the desert by the Jews. So Moses says this, let all who are wise of heart come and do. Obviously, they need all the skilled labor they can have, all the people who have talent, all the people who have knowledge to come forth to build this tabernacle to God. But that's not what it says. It says wise of heart. That's a really an unusual phrase. We don't usually say wise of heart. So he was asking not just those laborers, those skilled workers who had the knowledge to be able to build something really special, but those that had that love in their heart, that passion, and the knowledge to do what to do with their. Now, so it's not just building something that works, it's building something that really was meaningful. So to add meaning, that's the part of thinking, is the adding of meaning, which comes from the heart. So to close, the last word in the Torah, going back to Torah, which is which Jews revere as the key to Judaism is the study of Torah. Torah is not just really the scroll, it's all of the commentary of the rabbis and the writings, the Talmud, the Mishnah, etc., that we consider to be Torah, all the teachings of the scholars and the rabbis. But if we do look at the scroll, the 5 books of Moses, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, the last word in the Torah is Yisrael. You know, Moses never gets to really see the land that was promised. He leads the people there. He never gets to see it. But the last word in the Torah is Yisrael, which is Israel. It literally comes from the name that God gave Jacob after he wrestled with the angel. So it means, Yisrael means wrestle with God, or he who wrestles with God, which the Jewish people consider their whole long history. We've been wrestling with God, trying to find what does God want of us, and then go ahead and do it. The first word in the very first book of Genesis is Bereshit, in the beginning, Bereshit. So, if you take the last letter of the last word in the Torah and the first letter in the first word of the Torah, you have the Lamed Bet, which is Lev, which is heart. The Torah is the heart of the Jewish people. It has no beginning and no end. It's continuous. As the scroll is continuous, you don't stop. Once you finish the last word, you go right to the beginning of the book, the first word. So does anybody have any questions?
It's like James Joyce,
In what way?
the beginning and the end.
The beginning and
Thank you.
Thank you.
the end. Yes.
Thank you for this day. Very well. I had a question. In English, we had three words, pity, mercy, and compassion. What these words is very close when they are left for youth.
The first word was
It's pity,
Pity.
and compassion,
And mercy.
Because left in the youth is very, no is referred to organ, is splash is inside the body, soul, I don't know.
Well, if you're talking about compassion and mercy, pity, they are feelings, they're emotion, but they're thoughts also. They're thoughts of compassion. It's how you guide your thoughts in a compassion. Do you guide your thoughts in a compassionate way? Do you guide your acts, what you do, with the sense of mercy for others? So the mind and the heart have to work together, and that's the concept that we join, that heart-mind connection. But the heart it's the heart that acts on the mercy, the compassion. But it directs your thought. It's your will. That's where the will comes from. So the will to do good, the will to do evil comes from the heart.
Let's give her a